Okay. Once again, thanks for joining us today. We'll be talking about how to accelerate disaster recovery using fiber and network design tools. And before we get started, I just wanted to recognize that there are a lot of communities and companies dealing with some of the recent disasters that we've dealt with across the U.S. And we want to remind everybody that we're thinking of you. You also see in the bottom there's a Red Cross for the hurricane relief link. Just let you know that we'll be donating $100 for everybody that has attended this event today to help folks get back on their feet. So hopefully you can join us in that donation. If we can, I just want to introduce speakers. My name is Pizzutillo with VETRO. We are joined today by Chad Kay. He is the lead consultant and senior director at CCI Systems, and he brings many decades of experience in the telecom industry. He specializes in helping clients evolve their systems, leveraging his deep understanding of FTTH technologies. Chad, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Pete. Appreciate it.
Alongside Chad is Brian Mefford. He has been recognized in the broadband community for many years. His expertise led to the creation of Connected Nation and the CNX, which is a platform that fosters public-private partnerships. He consults with many of the folks out across the U.S. And Brian, thanks again for joining our conversation.
Great to be here.
Yeah, I want to just kind of jump in and sit in the background. As you guys know, that there's been, as usual, a ton of natural disasters, not just in the U.S., but across the world, right? And without getting into global warming theories, I just feel like their severity is increasing, and that we're all dealing with the impact on our environment, and many of our customers, friends, and partners are suffering with some of these disasters. I know you both have dealt with some of this in the past, and I'm having trouble changing it. One thing that jumped out is I found this statistic from Corey, and it talks about, it seems almost that the natural disasters are targeting some of our underserved areas, right? Maybe it just feels that way because of coverage, but when you look at the data, there are folks in the unserved census block areas that are highly susceptible to the significant natural disasters, hurricanes, tornadoes. You can see all the way through ice storms. I was wondering, reflecting on the recent disasters, what surprises you most about the impact of these networks, and how has that really shaped your thinking around this the situation? I'm going to start with Chad, if you have a comment there.
Honestly, it always puzzles me on how efficient people can be when you're called to the table. I think that's pretty much why we want to share some of our experiences here today. But it's really surprised me. I think as far as technology grew, so did our efficiencies as far as recovery on disaster. So I would take it back probably about 20 years ago on assisting in a very massive tornado strike that happened in the mid-states that we were a part of, and it took weeks, all the way through to months, to actually start getting a plan put in place to how we were going to address it because of the disaster. Where nowadays we're talking about maybe the same scenario that can be handled in a shorter time span. So from personal experiences on that point, Pete, I would say honestly, I think our evolution has made us a lot more efficient. Although we can't get away from it, it's just interesting that it's evolved that much as technology evolves. So does our recovery time.
Yeah, Brian, there's lots of ways this impacts us and communities and network operators. And here's just some examples, but and I know you're in Kentucky. You guys run into some of these things. Any stories you want to share there?
Well, and being in Kentucky, I'm just sitting here thinking, I used to have so less of context for, huge weather events. But just thinking back over the last few years, with Hurricane Ian in Florida, my parents and their friends were down there, and just kind of keeping track of them. And that you can still go down there and you see, fiber huts that are still exposed, whatever, two plus years later. It's a long, arduous process. With Helene, targeted towards Tampa. My middle son is on campus at the University of Tampa, and we pulled him out, of course, and he got him home, thankfully. But one of the things we did, and you don't think about how you might use technology until you're thrust in these kind of events, but there was literally a live cam on his dorm pointed toward the river there in Tampa. And so, and it never lost power, and it never lost connectivity. So we literally, I mean, through the night, we're checking it to see if my son's dorm was going to be flooded or not. Closer to home here where I am in Kentucky, Bowling Green, we had a massive tornado in December 2 years back, and talk more about it. But just being able to, that's where I got more involved with sort of the network recovery and seeing this kind of impact. You just have to have the data about where your network is and who is connected, and have a way to sort of quickly, most simple way possible, get people deployed, not just in the field directly, but also remotely able to access the details about your network, so you can, hopefully minimize the impacts that you've outlined here, Pete.
Yeah, and it's interesting. A lot of us immediately think to fresh water and health, medical supplies and medical help. But you're also seeing, I think, better responsiveness. I know they're deploying kind of temporary broadband just for communication purposes, which is, I think, an improvement over 10 years ago. But there's a lot more we can do, right? So, thinking about some of the things that we've been dealing with personally, as well as your customers or with your and partners, what are some of the key lessons that you've learned that help you kind of shape how you think about preparedness strategies? I don't know, Chad, if you want to start us there.
I think it's making people. I think Brian actually teed it up better than I did. It's actually getting the awareness out there sooner than later. As far as where this is going to happen, sometimes you don't even get a heads up on it, right? So I think a lot of it is awareness right out of the gate, and then obviously it's communications. I'll start with, obviously we're talking about assessing the damages. Well, we're going to want to make sure we have enough people to actually be prepared, folks that are going to be on site, ready to go. I think through all the hurricanes, we've seen the teams of folks that were just teed up states across, just waiting to actually get boots on the ground sooner than later. So that's probably the biggest portion of this is really the assessment right out of the gate. That's part one. I think following behind that is the teams who can take that information and process it quicker, faster, and more efficiently. So not only is it the boots on the ground aspect, but it's actually having the team behind it to do something with that data once you actually get your hands on it. The slide you showed previously, it shows customers, contact, loss of revenue. I mean, that all ties together to the sooner we can get people back up and running, obviously, is literally critical to getting the whole plant one piece at a time. So, getting a design behind it, getting materials behind it, getting the crews behind it, and then that all leads up right to the rebuild aspect that you have listed on the screen. So I think, it's first and foremost, I think it's communication. Second is assessment, obviously, and then who's going to take that data and do something with it, and then how fast can you get that data to them?
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. We're going to drill down a little bit into each of these areas. So I don't know, Brian, if you want to maybe reflect on, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges in assessing the damage, immediately after disaster recovery?
Well, it's chaos, right? And it's like, establishing priorities. And you mentioned, water, food, shelter is first. But I mean, people start asking about connectivity. And look at North Carolina, Western North Carolina right now. I mean, there's still some folks who, don't have reliable ability to reliably communicate with family outside of that area. But the chaos means that you have to have, you need a way to bring some calm, level-headed analysis to the situation with respect to your network. Again, going back to my experience in Bowling Green, Kentucky, a couple years back with the tornado, within a couple days, we were able to overlay the path of the tornado, and it was pretty massive, moved through our entire county. And then we had network data from our key local carriers and operators. So, I had you can imagine hundreds of people calling me saying, what can we do to help? What can we do to help? And literally was able to share different parts of that data to get help on the assessment so that, we could come in with, questions or thoughts and ideas. We could drill into looking at poll data before the hurricane or before the tornado rather, and imagine and be able to quantify, what cost around pole replacement was going to be and what the priorities had to be.
Yeah, Chad, how do you see technology helping with the assessment process?
I'll start with something as simple as cloud-based storage data, right?
Mhm.
So right out of the gates, you got boots on the ground, and people are trying to tell you where everything is located at, and what's good, what's bad, right? From a visual aspect, we're not even right down to the testing and technical data information. We're just talking about what these poles are snapped off in this particular run, right? One of the things that's unique about having cloud-based is that all of a sudden you go out in the field, and a lot of these areas they don't have power, they don't have connectivity. They're gonna go out there with their tablet, they're gonna store all this information on their tablet. As soon as they get back at night, I would say from a walk-off perspective, if we want to talk about 10 years ago, it was red line maps and sitting down all night, working day and night, trying to get this data and then figure out a place where you could fax it back. I'm going to date myself a little bit there, but but in a general sense, now it's getting on the tablet, and then the first area of connectivity you get back to, it's uploaded, right? So people can see what you've actually walked. You can actually see what is actually physically damaged. And kind of a call out to the VETRO team and their software as an example is, I'm a huge advocate for like the lasso tool, because it gives a guy like me, it's the simplicity of it, saying I'm going to circle this area. What's unique about that is that it makes me more efficient. I don't have to sit there and then draw it on a print with red line PDF and then wait for that to upload to the cloud. I got it on the VETRO piece. So, and there's other software that does it too, but I think that's a great call out for the VETRO platform as far as efficiencies and cloud-based data, Pete.
Yeah, thanks for that. Sorry, kind of jumped ahead here. I do want to get into the design, question here. So okay, disaster, hits. You start getting your hands around the problem. You're lots of challenges from being able to communicate with not only your team but also the citizens out there, your subscribers, perhaps. But if you have a digital representation of your network, being able to kind of get your hands around the input from the field in terms of disaster recovery or disaster impact. So then you move into the design phase, right? So you have a good sense of what's going on, and it's probably iterative. But, one of the things I think that would be an interesting tension is how to restore as quickly as possible, but also how to rebuild for better resiliency, taking in what you've learned there. I don't know, Chad, Brian, how do you guys have a view on what that balance looks like?
Yeah, maybe Chad, you can use the experience we had together with Oregon. I think it's sort of an extended version of that scenario, but has all the pieces.
Yeah, it does have all the pieces. Yeah. So I would say honestly that it was an opportunity to take a system and build it into the next I would say 10, 15 years from what they currently had, which was little to nothing. Throw a little flavor of a disaster in there too, and now you had barely anything, and then also a disaster that went through it and decimated it, right? Turn something that was just getting you by into we're barely working at all. The experience you're talking about, Brian, the customer we were working with had the forethought of saying, well, if we're going to do this, let's do it once, let's do it right, and let's get it into the next 10 years versus let's put a bunch of band-aids on this. So to your point, Pete, I think what was interesting about that whole exercise was a couple of things. It really showed us the efficiencies of utilizing one person, which in this occurrence was the customer on the ground, was doing the fact finding for us, so that Brian and myself could literally put the plan together and make it more efficient. And to that point where we're telling them points of references on the print to go research for us, we got that intel back within the drive time. right? And then we're also able to move the project along. I think the unique part about this is that, and I think this is where you're going, Brian, was the time that we had to make this happen was literally like 9 days. It was, and out of that 9 days was part of getting me up to speed with Brian's efficiency in VETRO so that I could actually keep up with them. So I think part of that was, say a day and a half of training, and 7.5 days later, we had a well thought out program along with the pieces that had to go together to make it work for this individual. Now, reeling that whole conversation back, disaster recovery was in the same notion, where we had a short amount of timeline. We wanted to get things on as quickly as possible, but utilizing people efficiently in the field so that other folks could actually sit back in an office location or off site and actually get this put together and assessed. And I think that's where you're going with that, Brian. I don't know if I stole the.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. And the efficiency, I think, is key. Like, and by the way, Chad, Pete, this is Chad's giving me way too much credit for my capabilities in that planning, but with the teamwork that was involved, and Chad's ability to sort of rapidly absorb how to use our tools at VETRO just made me very excited about extending this, our work together wherever we can. Because Chad, just to emphasize or say it, you had not used VETRO before. You've used plenty of tools, but in a day and a half, I got to watch it. And Chad's an exceptional engineer, no doubt, but a day and a half and he's off to the races.
It was fun. I think a lot of that too, and this part always gets kind of glazed over, but we put a plan together for an individual that was trying to rebuild an area. And again, I see this where this translates a lot to what we're talking about here today. But it was more than just the estimates, right? We were given it information into sections of data pertaining to materials or data pertaining to labor. So that's where I think that really, it crosses the gap as far as what we're talking about back then to now, is that this is an area that we knew that got damaged. We knew that it had to have, X amount of materials delivered on site. It would take, crews, like 3-4 crews, aerial, 3 underground. We could actually give that analysis. And again, anything that got caught up in the engineering world as far as, hurdles to get over, we had that within a drive time saying that we could actually get this accomplished. So that's that. I agree. That was a lot of long nights, but getting her done, right, Brian?
Right. Yeah, mostly for you, to be clear, and turned it around in a matter of days. I mean, and again, it opened my eyes to the value here between partnering with such a strong engineering firm and having the tools like we're offering at VETRO. 7, 8, 9 days, we turned around a package for funding that in the past, I mean, I've seen that take 6 months in the past. I've seen it take 9 months. I mean, you delivered it was 6 or 7 different plans.
Yeah, and that's an important part. Thank you for pulling that apart. I mean, so there's a lot of moving parts. Getting a good, clean view of the work to be done and understanding the cost and effort there. How does that help there's 2 different parties I think you're communicating with, right? So there's the public side, the public agencies that you're dealing with across your municipalities, but there's also the insurance companies, right? So I'm assuming that, what is that package? What does that exchange look like? I don't know if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is going to be the overall assessment, and what is the counter continue to go up to, right? Is this a, oops, I got a dent in my car, or did I lose my house kind of conversation, right? Those are 2 different spectrums, and I think the plan assessment is no different, right? There's a lot of folks who would say, even though it's just, like wind damage or hail damage, they think the cost is going to be low and the damage will be low, but it can wreak havoc like anything else, right? So I think it's more along the lines of getting folks out there and then going through that assessment, but having that continual update saying, okay, where are we at? Where is this at? And how much is this really going to cost? Because the insurance company's gonna be ready to write a check at some point, and there's really not a lot going back to the well unless you can justify it and show it, right? So making sure that you get it, again, communication and conversation is part of it. I think getting that counter going sooner than later, saying, hey, we got a lot of damage out here. Our current assessments is X, and we're only a quarter way through the system. Now you got your insurance company listening. They're not going to just let this slide.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And Brian, what about the interaction between the public sector agencies? What does that look like?
Yeah, again, thinking back to that Bowling Green experience, I mean, they need confidence that the competence and competent response for each sort of area that's been impacted in the community, and so you just imagine the amount of detail, like a mayor or here in where I am a county judge executive for the county, but how many details they're getting, I mean, from go. And so if you could just sort of simplify and package the telecom part of that, the broadband part of that, and they know the data are strong, they know that there's a clear plan, they're getting good feedback, and to be able to simplify the way you share that information visually being the best way, right? And so you can literally show the pictures like with walkouts, like we mentioned earlier, and so the assessment and then the costing and then what showing the progress, as Chad mentioned, towards getting things back on.
I might have overstepped there too, and I think that sharing is a good call out, Brian. Sharing up and sharing down. I mean, a lot of that can be shared as far as power companies saying where it's clear to go back to. I mean, obviously they have a bigger critical part as far as getting power back established in these areas, and everybody being held off until they get the all clear. In those scenarios, there's a lot of information being shared down, and very important, extremely important for crews that are sitting idly by, ready to assist. So I think that's another good call out too on the intel share.
Yeah, that's a good segue to the next step, right? I mean, so now we've done this assessment, rapid assessment. We're pretty confident about our ability to kind of overlay what was there and what the damage was and what should be. We talked a little bit about rapid design, confidently being able to build up the future or the network of the future for you as quickly as possible, and then submitting that information to both the counties as well as your insurance company. But so what happens typically in the rebuild? What are some of the things that we see holding up on the rebuild process as it is today?
Well, power is a necessity, and we kind of leaned in on that a little bit. But I think the other part of it is if you don't have this plan in place, you could be waiting for people to be freed up, especially in a bigger catastrophe. Labor is going to be a huge part of it. Materials for tier 2s and tier 3s, a lot of them are ground zero for where these disasters happen. So, even calling out where you need your materials to be drop shipped to, because obviously there's could be something that's critically wrong at the location, your office location. So having that plan sooner than later, I think is probably a bigger call out. As we laid out earlier, I think it's literally just getting in front of it the best you can.
Chad, you make a great point about the mid-tier companies and smaller companies being ground zero. That's so true, and it's just the human part of so resources, getting people deployed to restoration is key, because those companies are the ones who they potentially lost their homes, or their homes have been damaged. They're dealing with the catastrophe. So to the extent that you can leverage data and about the network to bring people in, get them up to speed quickly. Other sectors have more of a baked in rapid response, sending crews to an area. So that's something Telecom has to do better. And first it starts with data and planning to get them on the ground and equipped and ready to start restoring.
Yeah, and I think, Chad, you made a comment about sharing up and out. I really think at this phase, you're not dealing with a couple of people around a few computers designing a system. This is where it's like an exponentially, the the coordination problem becomes significant across contractors, maybe contractors from out of town. So what are some of the things that you've seen from a technology perspective to help bring in third parties and keep everybody on the same page?
Literally not too long ago, handing them our own company approved iPads. Something as simple as that, right? I think not worrying about if the Staples has power, so we can go make a bunch of 11x17 copies. There's technology gains right there alone, and then also sometimes it's to a point where what are you running low on? I mean, like I said, some of these guys are working morning, noon, and night. They're tired. If they're keeping a running tally of where they're at in the repairs, coming back and showing what portions of the system are done, having someone that's actually handling material aspects can say, "Oh, they're almost done with this run. We need to get another reel of fiber over to them and keep these guys rolling." Something as simple as that, Pete. I think it's just literally the efficiencies from utilizing things in the cloud, making sure that it's keeping the communication flows going, and then also tying it all back to material and labor.
Yeah, Brian, it's a good point. Thank you for that. I mean, so Brian, there's a consideration of getting progress from the folks that are working with you to rebuild it. But in the meantime, there's all these, your community, your citizens, your subscribers are kind of left in the dark. I mean, so maybe we can talk a little bit about what you've seen in terms of best practices to help people understand when services will be restored. So they're just not so, they're already afraid. How do we help them,
Yeah,
understand?
well, and that's back to the sharing out point, right? And we keep pounding the drum on simplicity, and that's again what it's all about. In a catastrophe, to be able to calm the chaos in whatever way you can control and have impact on. And one of those is having resources, having tools that you can decide, you can choose which information to share out to the public. So again, Bowling Green, we've got people, contractors and company operators dialed into the lowest depth of detail about restoration. But then, toggling buttons here and there, you can then share that out publicly. And so it's not like you're not recreating the wheel every time that you want to, deliver an updated message. It's all unified in a single spot. And by the way, just before I miss this point, like simplicity, it used to be that, you needed to have, if you were going to do what we're talking about today with data and mapping and visualization and network planning, you needed a GIS professional. I mean, literally, people expected to have somebody on staff who was certified, and usually, smaller company, that's tough to begin with, but usually it's one person, and they become sort of the choke point. So you've got to democratize that data and those tools so that anybody can step in and in a couple of days be up to speed if they've never used anything like it before.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So, oh my goodness, I'm getting spammed. Can't believe that happened.
It's not showing up.
So thank you for unpacking all that and sharing your experiences there. So, thinking about getting ready, if I'm, relatively new or I'm thinking about this for the first time, walk me through how I should be thinking about getting prepared for future disasters.
I'll start. I'll let Brian correct me when I say something foolish, but but I think it's honestly it's utilizing technology to start. I think we've kind of really beat that horse pretty hard here. But honestly, to your point, Pete, I think it's really getting your information in the cloud so that it's accessible to many folks upon command. We started with that. I think a lot of it also rolls into boots on the ground sooner than later, utilizing the technology base. So it's not just, red line prints. We're actually talking about cloud data that can be shared amongst many individuals after it's been updated. Roll it into making sure everybody understands that once the data is there, someone's milling through it and doing something with it. It just doesn't sit for an assessment at the end of a week's time, which has happened in the past. So that, sooner than later. So basically project manage someone to have that information ready to get handed out to folks that are going to either A, handle design, B, handle material ordering, or C, handle labor assessments or labor needs at that point. And then at the back end of that very statement is literally putting the plan together, taking all that information and starting to formulate the plan, because some of the bigger catastrophes that we're talking about, this might be plan A out of A through Z, because there's so much that's been damaged and so much that needs to be assessed. So I think taking those first few steps is the most critical part. But then having somebody to coordinate the back end of that would probably be the last piece that I'd put a bow on it and say that's the way I would address it.
Yeah, Brian, I mean, so there's one thing that the network operators can do on their own to get ready. What are you seeing from, the local, state, or federal governments in terms of helping, or at least mandating people think about this and have good plans in place?
Yeah. I mean, maintaining that ability to collaborate and to share information. Obviously, we've hit that theme quite enough here too. But I can't help but think of the BEAD program and the funding that's going to flow out of that, and to realize that, or think back to the NOFO, and I've got my dog-eared coffee stain right here beside of me, and there's a section that is on climate resilience, and the clear expectation that a successful subgrantee proposal, meaning that one coming from the operators, ISPs, to the state and then approved and sent to NTIA, that NTIA expects to see that box checked, that climate resiliency box. And just a couple of pieces out of that, like I'm just reading from that. Communities that lack broadband are also often the most vulnerable to extreme weather and climate events. So Pete, to your earlier slide. And then the next paragraph, in light of the above, eligible entities should make use of the available tools and resources. And they go on to mention, NOAA and other federal agencies, but also they've opened up the ability to bring in platforms and tools that are going to overlay that data and visualize it on top of your network. And there's a baked in expectation from NTIA with the BEAD grants that there is local community collaboration in how that network is going to be built. So you could imagine, to be able to share visibility about potential weather impacts even is going to be viewed very favorably by the NTIA.
Mm-hmm. You know what, Brian, that stemmed a thought too. Honestly, the first responders and anchor institutions is another huge call out as far as critical. I mean, getting your system back up is mission critical, obviously, but there's going to be the areas that are going to be prioritized. I think being able to share that intel and have that readily available for those who aren't in the cable TV or telco world. I'm showing when those facilities will be back up and operational at 100% for data flow and usage. I think that's another good call out too.
That's a great point.
This is one more technical question there for Chad. So this first bullet talks about identifying vulnerabilities within your network. I mean, AI is all the rage. I mean, do you see coming down the future, or shortly in the future, where technology, AI driven or not, can help network operators overlaying both kind of their demographic, all the other geographic information, weather information, to get a better sense of where these vulnerabilities may be?
I wholeheartedly believe it. I think there's going to be a lot of AI assistance that's going to come down the pipeline. I don't know that we're 100% there yet. I might get some flack for saying that, but I'll go out on a limb. I mean, there's a lot of simplistic programs that are out there for just core network backup that's utilizing information fed to it daily that says these are the areas affected or could be affected if I go down. Now they can start analyzing it from a individual lateral run or just a like I said earlier, maybe just circle an area, and all of a sudden maybe that's the next wave that we're going to see, right? Like, I think we're out over here. Okay, this is what we all need from an AI perspective, but then we got to do boots on the ground to still scrub that intel. So little cryptic, but I think honestly what I'm trying to say is that AI is going to play a part. Yes. Does it play a part today in short doses, but it still has to have that human interact to scrub the intel and make sure it's accurate.
Yeah, and I think if you look at weather prediction anyway, there's the AI algorithms already baked in there. It's really digitizing all the variables and then being able to run good simulations against those variables. Really, I think that's kind of where we're playing catch up a bit.
Well, and I mean, on that point, like if you take the hurricane spaghetti models, I think is what they call them. I mean, you literally can run scenarios on your network based on each of those spaghetti paths, and so you could, begin deploying and getting folks ready and communicating with those customers ahead of time. So if this, then that, if this, then that kind of scenario.
If your lights blink twice, call us. If they blink 3 times, run for cover.
Yeah, this is a question from the audience here. Brian, is there any place we can go to where there's disaster recovery kind of community sharing? What other people are doing. Have you seen anything like that on any of the?
Well, NOAA is definitely one of those, one of those places mentioned earlier. So they're intended to be able to, equip communities and equip operators alike. So that's a good starting point.
Chad, have you seen anything? Is there a disaster recovery club?
I only on a customer based level in communication with local. I haven't seen it on a grander scale yet, but I think after the most recent ones, I think that's going to become more popular. Honestly, I'll just do a call out. It may be something that Brian and I team up on in the days to come. Who knows?
Right.
Yeah, I just wanted Brian, you mentioned BEAD money is going to drive some of this thinking. I think there's other grants that probably have that baked in there. So 12, 24 months down the road, what does network building look like, given these kind of mandates to be more resilient? Do you see significant changes or,
definitely the hardening of the assets, and resiliency expectations increased. And so sort of making, hate to use a cliche, but lemonade out of lemons, in a catastrophe like that. I mean, that is one of the opportunities. And then also, like we've been talking about, that it sort of forces this planning around having deployable assets on call. And I know what Chad, again, other sectors have that covered. I mean, you think of rural co-ops, and it's phenomenal to see, the staging of hundreds of cherry pickers and bucket trucks ready to go, days ahead of a catastrophe. Well, not always do you have that kind of time to plan. And so you've got to be able to rapidly respond and deploy on a moment's notice. So there's more work to be done in this sector in that respect.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Chad, real quick, just so people can learn more about CCI, a little overview.
Yes, thank you. So CCI Systems, 1,100 strong, as you see on the screen, handling consulting, engineering services, design, also fiber splicing, which is kind of our thing. Partner with a lot of construction firms on our support to actually do full turnkey in the event that those conversations come up. And then, of course, obviously working with the fine folks at VETRO with some of those design software systems that we work on and through.
Yeah, and just a shameless plug here. Yeah, so I heard a little bit about our platform, our fiber management platform. We work with over 300 customers globally. Been around for about 7 years, startup in the space. And if you're looking for more information, you can reach us at vetrofibermap.com. I think that's it. No, here we go. Also, I know Chad's been on the road speaking with us, and we look forward to having him at more events, but you also can find us at some of these events. Hopefully you get a chance to stop by. This discussion was recorded, so everything will be made available. You'll get an email when that's readily available. Chad, I really appreciate taking your time to kind of walk us back through some of these experiences that you've had, and thank you for all your help getting people back on their feet.
Thank you. I appreciate it, Pete and Brian. Thanks for the invite.
And Brian, always a pleasure, and thank you for your time and sharing your insights.
Well, thank you, and thanks for the idea to make the collaborative donation. So glad we're able to do that.
Yes.
Some folks may have missed that on the front end. If you want to repeat that, maybe.
Yes, what Brian's talking about, as part of our support of those dealing with natural disasters, the most recent folks, we'll be donating $100 for all each attendee on today's discussion to the Red Cross Hurricane Relief Fund. You can find more information about that on the Red Cross's website. So again, I want to thank our audience for taking time to listen to us and joining us today. I will wish everybody a safe, obviously heading into heavy winter. So hopefully it's a mild winter. And thank you again.